everyone. Hope you all had some time to relax and recharge over the holidays. Now we're back and ready to dive into something that might not sound like the most exciting topic at first glance.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Faith-based financial goals for the new year. But trust me, this deep dive is going to be way more interesting than you might think. We're going to explore the psychology behind making smart money choices, all through a faith-based lens.
Yeah, get ready for some serious mind shifts.
We've got two fantastic books as our guides today, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman and The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. It's like having a brain scientist and a financial guru team up to help you win with money.
And they actually complement each other so well. Kahneman really gets into the nitty-gritty of how our minds work, while Ramsey gives us those super practical, no-nonsense steps to get our finances in order.
Right, like a perfect pairing. Okay, so Kahneman talks about these two systems of thinking, System 1 and System 2. System 1 is kind of like our autopilot. It's fast, intuitive, and driven by emotions.
It's like, when you instinctively swerve to avoid a pothole while driving. That's System 1 in action.
Makes sense. So what about System 2?
System 2 is more deliberate, more analytical. It's that part of us that kicks in when we're solving a complex problem or, say, planning a budget.
Interesting. So how do these systems play out when it comes to our finances?
Well, here's the thing. When it comes to money, we often let System 1 take the wheel, which can lead to some, less than ideal decisions.
Wait, so you're telling me our brains are practically wired to make bad money choices? How does that work?
Think of it this way. Remember how Ramsey says that sometimes stupid ideas seem to work out when times are good, like when the economy's booming and everyone's making money?
Yeah, I remember that.
That's because our emotional System 1 is in charge, making us feel super optimistic and more likely to take risks.
Right. When everyone around you seems to be winning, it's easy to get caught up in the excitement and think, hey, I can do that too.
Exactly. But then when things inevitably change and the market shifts or whatever, those risky decisions can really backfire.
Oof, yeah, not good. So understanding how our minds work, like really understanding these systems, can make a huge difference in how we handle our finances.
Absolutely. And that's where the magic happens when you combine Kahneman's insights with Ramsey's practical advice. We're not just learning about managing money, we're getting a crash course in the psychology of money.
Okay, I'm liking where this is going. So how do we get System 2, that logical side, to take charge when it comes to our money?
Well, one of the most fascinating concepts Kahneman talks about is loss aversion. Basically, he found that the pain of losing money, let's say $100, feels way worse than the pleasure of gaining the same amount.
That actually explains a lot. It's like how getting out of debt can feel so daunting, even if you know it's the right thing to do.
Exactly. We're wired to avoid losses, which can make it really tough to tackle things like debt, saving, or investing. And that's where Ramsey's approach shines. He's all about getting out of debt and achieving financial freedom.
So by following his plan, we're essentially tackling that fear of loss head on.
Precisely. It's not just about crunching numbers and creating budgets. It's about understanding the deeper psychological forces at play. And that's what makes this combo of Kahneman and Ramsey so powerful.
Now, you mentioned earlier that Ramsey's a big believer in debunking those money myths we often tell ourselves.
Oh, there are tons of them.
So let's look at a few and see how they line up with what Kahneman tells us about how our brains can trick us. What do you say?
Sounds good to me. Okay, so let's start with this whole idea that debt consolidation is like some magic solution.
Oh, yeah, that one's a classic. They make it sound so appealing, right? Just roll all your debts into one lower monthly payment.
Right. But as Ramsey points out, it often just masks the real problem, which is overspending and not having a handle on your finances.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg.
Yeah.
You're not really fixing anything, are you?
Exactly. And this is where Kahneman's work on framing comes in. He shows how the way information is presented or framed can really influence our decisions, even if the options themselves are actually the same.
So those debt consolidation companies are masters of framing, basically, highlighting that lower payment, but kind of glossing over the fact that you'll end up paying more in the long run.
Yep, spot on. And of course, our emotional System 1 loves a quick fix, right? It doesn't always think things through.
Right, it's all about those instant rewards. Okay, what about this one? Leasing a car is what sophisticated people do. I've heard that one a lot.
Oh, that's a good one. It plays right into our desire to look successful, even if it means stretching our budgets way too thin.
But Ramsey's pretty clear that leasing is actually the most expensive way to drive a car. What do we fall for that, do you think?
I think this one's a prime example of Kahneman's anchoring bias. Basically, we tend to get fixated on the first piece of information we hear, even if it's not really relevant to the bigger picture.
So, like, if the car salesperson hits you with that low monthly lease payment right off the bat.
Exactly. We anchor to that number without considering, the total cost over the entire lease term, or the fact that you're basically just renting a car for years and have nothing to show for it at the end.
Hmm. Makes you realize we might not be as sophisticated as we think we are.
Maybe not. And how could we forget the classic, the myth of the lottery, that playing those lucky numbers is a real path to wealth?
Oh, yeah, that one. It seems like everyone knows someone who won big.
Right, and that's the availability heuristic in action. Kahneman found that our brains tend to overestimate the likelihood of something happening based on how easily we can recall examples of it.
So those lottery winner stories we see on TV, those make it seem way more likely that we'll win than, the actual odds.
Exactly. Our brains are tricking us, playing with our emotions. And as Ramsey says, the lottery is pretty much a tax on the poor and on people who can't do math.
Ouch. That's a pretty harsh truth.
Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely starting to see how understanding these psychological traps can help us make smarter financial decisions. But how do we tie all of this into our faith? That's where I'm really curious to see how Ramsey brings it all together.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I really appreciate about Ramsey's approach is his emphasis on something he calls gazelle intensity. He talks about how, when a gazelle is being chased by a lion, its only focus is escaping. No distractions, no hesitation, just pure survival instinct.
Okay, so we should be attacking our debt with the same ferocity that a gazelle uses to outrun a lion. I get the analogy, but that seems a bit intense, don't you think? I mean, what about enjoying life along the way?
That's a good point, and I think it's all about balance, really. It's not about depriving yourself or living in fear, but more about recognizing the importance of getting out of debt and making it a top priority.
Okay, so finding that middle ground between, gazelle level intensity and not turning into a total hermit who's afraid to spend money on anything fun.
Exactly. And this is where Kahneman's ideas about cognitive ease and effort are really helpful. Our brains are kind of lazy, They're naturally drawn to easy choices, even if those choices aren't actually the best for us in the long run.
Like ignoring that credit card bill because facing it just feels too overwhelming. I know I've been there.
Oh, we all have. And Ramsey totally gets that. He knows tackling debt can be scary, so he gives us these practical strategies to overcome that inertia and, tap into that inner gazelle.
You know what I really love? That story he tells about the woman who created a giant debt snowball chart and stuck it right on her fridge. It's like turning your fridge into a motivational coach. Do you think that kind of visual reminder actually works?
Oh, absolutely. It's brilliant, really, because it activates system 2, that logical part of our brain, and keeps our goals right there in our face. It's a constant reminder of the progress you're making, which can be so motivating.
So it's like having that lion, the one chasing the gazelle, staring you down every time you reach for a snack.
Yeah.
Keeps you focused on the bigger picture.
Uh-huh. I love that, and it ties in perfectly with another principle Ramsey emphasizes. Writing down your goals. It might seem basic, but it's incredibly powerful, especially when you're trying to, integrate your faith into your finances.
Why is writing things down so important?
Well, for one thing, it makes you get specific about what you want to achieve. It's easy to say, I want to be financially free, but what does that actually look like for you? How much debt do you need to pay off? How much do you want to save?
So going beyond those vague ideas and really getting clear on the numbers, like having a concrete plan.
Exactly. And this is where Kahneman's research on the planning fallacy is so insightful. He found that we humans are terrible at estimating how much time and effort things will actually take. We tend to be overly optimistic, which can set us up for disappointment.
Oh man, I am so guilty of that. I always underestimate how long projects will take or how much things will cost.
Yeah, we all do it. It's part of being human. But having a written plan, a detailed budget, can help us counteract that bias. It forces us to confront reality, to look at our income and expenses, and make conscious choices about our spending.
It's like creating a roadmap for your finances instead of just, wandering around aimlessly hoping for the best.
That's a great way to put it. And here's another Kahneman concept that can be super helpful: narrow framing. He suggests that breaking down large goals into smaller, more manageable chunks makes them feel less daunting.
So instead of focusing on, like, paying off $50,000 of debt all at once, you break it down into smaller steps, like paying off one credit card at a time.
Exactly. And every time you hit one of those smaller goals, it creates a sense of momentum, a feeling of progress, which keeps you motivated and keeps that gazelle intensity going strong.
Okay, so we've talked about the psychology of money, some practical steps, but I'm really eager to explore the faith element of all of this. How does Ramsey weave faith into his financial advice?
He actually has this really powerful quote. If you are a good person, it is your spiritual duty to possess riches for the good of mankind.
Wow, that's a powerful statement. It kind of challenges the common belief that money is bad or that wealthy people can't be spiritual.
Right. It completely flips the script. He's saying it's our responsibility to be financially successful so that we can use those resources to actually make a difference in the world.
So it's not about hoarding wealth. It's about being a good steward of what we've been given and using it for a greater purpose.
Exactly. And he talks about all the amazing emotional and spiritual benefits that come with being debt-free. Less stress, stronger relationships, a greater capacity for generosity.
So it's not just about financial freedom. It's about this deeper sense of peace and fulfillment that comes from aligning your money with your values.
Absolutely. And I think it's something we can all benefit from, really reflecting on. How can our financial goals be a reflection of our faith? How can we use our resources, no matter how big or small, to make a positive impact?
This deep dive has been amazing. I feel like I'm finally seeing that connection between my faith and my finances. Like it's all starting to click.
It's a pretty powerful connection for sure. And one of the things that really struck me reading both Kahneman and Ramsey is that achieving true financial freedom, well, it often looks a lot different than we might think.
You know, it's funny. I was just thinking about that earlier when we were talking about leasing a car to look successful. And then Ramsey comes in with that whole thing about how the average millionaire drives a used car.
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
It does. Makes you realize that real wealth, it's not about keeping up with everyone else or trying to impress people. It's about making wise choices with your money, being content with what you have, and building a solid foundation for the future.
And that aligns so well with the principles of faith. Being a good steward of your resources, living below your means, focusing on what truly matters.
Absolutely. It's about shifting your mindset from scarcity to abundance, trusting that God will provide for your needs.
And when you operate from that place of faith and trust, it opens up so many possibilities. You can be more generous with your time and money, invest in your community, pursue your passions without being weighed down by financial stress.
It's about aligning your financial goals with your spiritual values, using your resources to make a real difference in the world.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that money is a tool. It can be used for good or bad, and it's up to us to decide how we'll use it.
So instead of chasing after the latest and greatest or trying to keep up with what everyone else is doing, we can focus on building a life that's actually meaningful and purposeful. Invest in experiences, relationships, causes that align with our faith.
And when you do that, you not only achieve financial freedom, but you find this deep sense of fulfillment and joy. It's like finding that sweet spot where your financial goals and your spiritual goals intersect.
I love that. It's not an either-or thing, right? You can be financially responsible and spiritually grounded.
They go hand in hand.
As we start this new year, I think it's a great time to reflect on how we can integrate our faith more intentionally into our financial decisions.
Definitely.
What are some practical things our listeners can do to start aligning their money with their faith?
Start by praying for guidance. Seek out mentors or resources that can help you, develop a better understanding of what the Bible says about money. Maybe even join a faith-based financial group or take a course on stewardship.
Those are all great ideas.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask for help. There are so many resources out there.
There are. And remember, it's a journey. It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress one step at a time.
This has been such an inspiring conversation. I'm ready to take control of my finances and use them for good.
Me too.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into faith-based financial goals for the new year.
Remember, you have the power to create a life of financial freedom and spiritual abundance. It all starts with aligning your money with your faith and using your resources to make a positive impact.
Until next time, keep diving deep.